Okay, we are now live. We have a mic. Let me see. I don't know if the mic's working as good as it could. Maybe we bring it down a little bit. I don't see big lines there. Let me make sure it's still far. Testing 3, 4, 5. I think that's a little bit better.
Yeah.
People don't care about the mic being in the view. Okay, we are back after a few days. We're going to have to continue to do some work on this client.
Yep.
So we can get to our decentralized auth and things like that. So let's jump in here so we don't waste a lot of time. I need to get back to our editor. Okay. So if I go back to our notes again, cat main here. Okay. Now, off screen, we decided that we would put our client ID in that frame where it says chat. So that's not a big deal. Did we ever get the enter key working?
We did.
We did.
I did that off.
And we have latest on that. Let me double check that I have latest. I think I do.
Yeah, I pushed that up.
Git pull. Okay, so we did this, and we know what we're going to do there, so that's fine. Okay, so what I want to do, at least today, is we're going to change out the UUID for a just simple integer for now.
Yep.
I want the client to have a config file that gets created if it doesn't exist. And what it will do is, at least right now, we'll generate a unique ID for everybody and a name. And then one of the things I said to Kevin was that it would be nice to also sort of maintain a list of like people you chat with. So when a chat comes in, if that's not in the file, we'll add it to the file. So it's always in that sort of list.
It's like a list of contacts.
A list of contacts, essentially. And at least try to get all that done today. So I think if we've got all that, then going into next week, we should be able to start thinking about the decentralized sort of auth. Now, if you remember in CAP, we had a section when we were starting all this stuff here, right?
Yep.
I'm going to steal this sort of code here. You might argue, like, why don't we, it's so much code, we should probably put that in a file or something, you know?
Yeah.
Because, you know what, a lot of this is going to be the same. The only difference here will be, we return the cap ID, we read it, we open it.
Well, instead of a UUID, we're just going to use...
We will, but that's just data at the end of the day, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we need, like, a lot of this code is the same, I think, for both purposes. And this is the sort of creating what we want. Just a lot of, so let's just experiment with this for a second. I don't even know what I would call this package though, to be honest with you. It would have to be foundational if we're going to use it in both. And the idea would be to create a file and then sort of write to it, but I don't know. All right, maybe I just create a folder. So here was another thing I was thinking of, is that we already have a package. We already had a package that manages users, right?
We do.
That was, where was that package here? Under the domain? App layer? Where was that package? Didn't we already have a am I in the right project? Yeah. It's not foundational. It's not there. I would have thought it was in the app layer. At chat. What am I? Oh, it must be here. Okay.
Yeah,
so we hit it in front of, we hit it inside of chat on the server side, right? And these were users that we knew. What were we using this for again?
Ping and pong.
Ping and pong, adding a user to storage. Actually, I want to remember what we were using this for. Adding, pinging, and ponging, and removing. Oh, this was for all the, really it was for all the socket connection management. That's really what it was for, right? So
Yeah.
users is kind of a bad name, really, because it's users that are connected to the cap, right? Okay, that's fine. So can't really use that stuff. But I'm thinking here that we need to also manage a set of users here that we would put into the UI at some point, right? So we have app, we have client, we've put everything in one chat here, but why don't we start something like a users file here? And maybe what this can do is be something to manage that list of users that we have, including creating this sort of file
Okay.
and doing it there, right? So maybe we do something like this. I don't know what's in here yet. I do know that we're going to want to construct something related to new users.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I don't know what that looks like just yet. We didn't do anything with comments yesterday either, did we?
No.
We're bad people. We got to do that. The problem is once you don't do it, you never go back to it. So
Yeah.
you know what the problem is? I'm on the project I'm working on for Prediction Guard.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't get anybody on the team to do the comment work.
And now
So-
it's rubbing off.
No, it's not that. I just told them that we're not adding comments to exported stuff anymore because it was too much of a battle. And since the linter doesn't care, all the linter cares about is that there's a comment at the top of one of these package, which we don't have here, right? So, and even that, there's no chat. It's app. This is turning into a package that contains, doesn't provide yet either, which is all bad stuff. But we'll get back to that. So none of this will pass the linter at this point if I try to lint it, because we need at least one file that does package chat provides sort of client support. I don't know. That we need. But we should have a chat.go, and right now we don't. We have our app. Now, maybe app.go can be our chat.go. Maybe that makes sense. Or we don't call this chat. What if we call this, go back to app, right?
Okay.
And maybe really this should have been called app the whole time. That makes more sense, I think. Because we're building, like, this is all within the scope of that app, right? What's also nice now is if that's going to be called app, we can just do a new here. Because that's what we're returning. We're returning an app, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And then now that this app package provides this app support, now I can say here, package app provides client app support. So our linter requires that 100%. There's no way around that. But the static check linter doesn't, even if I turn everything on, doesn't require this. Because this is, you have to do this if you're writing third-party packages that other people are going to consume. But for internal stuff like this is for this product we're building, nobody else is consuming it but our dev team. I think it's okay to not have the comments for the exported stuff. But if you're writing some third-party packages for people like foundational stuff, let's say,
Yeah. You want comments.
you sort of really want it. Now, you can see here that I've been trying to follow those rules here. So at some point we should go back, because either we're doing it or we're not. So that's my rule, right? Either we're doing it and let's do it, or we're not doing it, in which case, if we decided we're not doing it, I'd get rid of all these comments because now there's inconsistency. Foundational packages, we really want to treat like they're third party.
Yeah.
But nothing else would necessarily need these comments. Now, I don't want to spend time right now doing it, but the moment you say I don't want to spend time doing it, you never go back to it. we
Yeah.
never get her done. We're going to get it done, okay? Or we're going to make a choice at the end. Either we're going to do this or we're not, in which case I'm going to go in and remove all the comments that we've been adding here and just, right? Because this is all internal stuff, right? And maybe offline I'll do that. I think I'm just going to get rid of all the comments for everything that isn't foundational. I mean, these are good to keep, right? But
Yeah.
but where we don't really need it. And that's the way I've been working with my teams now on products at the client side. I just can't get them to do it. So why fight it? Okay, so I think this was a good change, calling it app, and we're going to have these users. But the first thing we need is this sort of config. And I think this user's code can own the config stuff here. So let's just do something like func users, maybe we call it get config. I hate APIs that start with the word get, unless we're dealing with context value bag. Just irks me to no end, dude. So what should this config do? The idea of the config is to kind of read it and bring all that information in. But I think what we can do also is that if we call config and we don't have a config file, sort of generate one sort of right there on the fly, right? Okay. So I'll know this at least, right? We're going to need an ID. Let's just say an ID is a string right now, regardless of what it looks like. Let's do this here. Okay. I know that we're going to need some sort of, now I've made it exported there, which would mean that we could just access the ID directly.
Okay.
And it might be fine for what we're doing, right? Like we don't have to protect ourselves from ourselves. So I think that might be fine. And we know we're also going to have a name, right? Now, the other thing is that we're going to have a collection of these things, aren't we?
Yeah, we're going to have more than one.
So what if I do this? That's going to be a user, okay? And then users are going to be say a slice of that, right?
Okay.
Okay. And then my brain wants to do this, and I'm not sure that I'm happy about it. My brain right now wants to do this. Should be capital. Okay. Why? Because I think that's what the configuration file could look like. But instead of user, this would be maybe like the owner, or I don't know what you call me, right, in the system. So the idea would be a config file that sort of looked like that.
That would separate you from the people you have added.
Yeah, because we could put this all in one file, right? Like, I don't like the word owner, but like these are users. Okay, so why don't we do this? We call this user.
Instead of users, why not contacts?
Yeah, that's exactly where I was going. Yeah. And if that's the case, then we can call this contacts, right? Right. And that's what your sort of config looks like. It looks like this. Now, the question then is that if that's going to be the case, let's go with calling this config for a second. Okay. And really, I don't even think we need a new. I think what we can do, it's going to be an API. Is it going to be an API or is it going to be data? Why don't we treat it as data?
I feel like it would be data.
Yeah, why don't we treat it as data to start?
Okay.
Because that means that we could do something like this. where it's just about read the config, right? And if there is no config, then we can write a config. So we're going to need to be able to write a config. But really what we're going to need to be able to do is two things. So this is where I'm wondering if it's really just data, right? At some point we're going to need to be able to create a new config. And we're going to need the ability to add a contact. Now, if we do it this way, right, add a contact, then we can use our value semantics, oops, from an API design perspective. Do this. So the idea is we read the config when it comes up. If it doesn't exist, we can call create. And then as new users are coming into the system, we could do an add contact and return a new config with that information in it. Now, what if this got really big? That would be sort of wasteful because you already got this. So one could argue then what we do is we say, again, using value semantics, give me your config, give me the new user, we'll write it to disk and give you a new config that now gets updated. That would be the right API for value semantics.
Got it.
Okay? This is just like append, slice in, slice out. This is like time, right? Given a time, add it, you get a new time. So given a config, adding a user, you get a new config. So that's if we're going to keep this as value semantics. If we want to treat this more as an API, then this here becomes a method using pointer semantics, right? And then this becomes sort of a method where you read it in, and so I don't have a problem treating this as data because then the client app basically has this config, can work with it, can read it, can do what it has to do itself. I don't think there's any multi-threading going on here. So if at some point so here's one design, okay?
This is value semantic.
This is a value semantic design.
Okay. I was going to ask, what would it look like if you were doing it?
All right, so what would it look like if we were doing it the other way? So we would do something like this. A new config, returning a pointer, which essentially returns an empty config at that point. But just because people are used to the new, if we're going to have an API around it, we would do something like that. Then what would happen is you would have a method using pointer semantics, right?
Something like that.
Now, a new config could also, it could do the read for us, right? Read config file, which would mean now that, so this gets really complicated, right? Because if you read it and it doesn't exist,
then you have to create.
So read config file, create the new config file. Let's say we did that, okay? This could then now return an error, okay? Which would mean that you don't need any of this anymore, right? Because new does all of that for you. And then you would just need an add contact, and that could be an error, right? And so, arguably, always use value semantics on the construction, when assigning to a variable. So this is what the API would look like if we did it this way, okay? Which again, might not be bad. And then these would be unexported, okay? Why is it complaining? They wouldn't, okay, so now that leads to another problem.
Because it needs to be.
So, no, this could stay unexported, but we would need, for the read here, let's just say, var. So I would do this, because what that would do is keep this unexported.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. This would have to be a user. We create a literal struct to do the marshalling and the unmarshalling, which is not a big deal. And we store everything in there. So the user won't be able to access its user information or context directly. Now, all that sort of does then is also for something else.
So doing it with value semantics, we're kind of like separating concerns a little better. This one, everything's more.
The question is this
context.
data or is it not data? If it's
Yeah.
data, then just give them the data and let them work with it. I don't think that we have anything in terms of multi-threading going on right now. But if we did, this design would let us put a mutex around some stuff
Okay.
and prevent multi-go-routine access at the same time. And we might have some of this because, you know, when we come back to this sort of thing, we're registering functions to be called when the button is hit. We're going to have another go routine coming in and accessing the connection and needing to talk to the UI.
Mm-hmm.
So we might have some potential for multi-threaded access, which tells me that we're going to need essentially a rewrite mutex in order to protect reads and writes. So see, now what happens is if we want to do this, return a copy of the user, now what do we need? We need a c.mu.readlock defer. Now luckily this is already a struct, and so we get sort of the copy for free. Okay. Now this is complaining probably because user's user. So we get the copy for free here,
Mm-hmm.
which is nice, but we do it with a read unlock. So now it's basically thread safe there, right? If we need the contacts, again, now we're treating it like data. Now we're treating the fields like data, right? So if we need the contacts, that's no big deal. This will just be the contacts. But I'm wondering now if we even need that type. Like, is that type really adding any value? It's a slice of user at the end of the day.
Collection of
Right.
user.
I don't know why we went in that direction to begin with, but there's a but these are getters at the end of the day, even if I don't write get.
Mm-hmm.
So it would be nice sometimes to just give them the data, give them a copy of the data, and we're done, as opposed to this.
This seems now like it's getting more
This is
complex.
fast. Well, this is fast. It's 24 bytes, so it's all a matter of, do we need to protect the data from multi-go routine access? Off the top of my head, I keep thinking I don't, but remember, we're gonna have a socket running on a go routine right? We have a socket connection
Yes,
that
we do there.
is here. And when the messages come in, it's going to have to write to the UI, but that's on the app side. But if it's a new user, we're going to have to write to that that list. We're going to need, and we're going to need to update it. And what if this comes in at the same time we hit this? And you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I know there are a couple Go routines in play.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if we'll ever have the data race, but it doesn't hurt to move in this direction here. All right. So if you need a copy of the user, and that would be, you need us.
Mm-hmm.
You need a copy of the contacts so you can maybe update a list or see what the current list is.
Got it. Okay.
I don't know. This has to for sure be exported because we're going to be returning that, but it's going to be a copy. So I think that's going to be fair. And then adding a contact requires a whole a whole bunch of things
Well, there we're going to be adding them to the file itself.
also.
So
Yeah.
then,
Adding it to our list as well.
yeah.
And we'll add it to this and we'll write it to the file. So why don't we work on this? So let's go with this design. But you know, adding a contact isn't a read lock, it's going to be a write lock,
Yep.
right? Like we know that's going to be there. We don't need any locks here because it's the first time this is all happening on the main Go routine. So there's nothing to synchronize. But if we go back and look at some of this code that we had for cap ID, right? Okay. So we know the very first thing is, does the file exist? Now, from my perspective, I think what we can do is say that the files, we can do two things. I don't know what the right thing is. We can write it to Zarf and just leave it there, or keep it next to the binary. The problem is that when I do a go run, it ain't gonna find it, because go run builds things in a wacky temporary folder,
Okay.
right? You can't necessarily assume there. So my guess is that we did this thing, right? Nats ID file path, like we did this. So one could argue that we could do the same thing, but then on a new config, we're going to need the file path, right? And then what would, we can just call this file sort of config, right? And maybe we call config JSON just to make it easy. So this is going to be somebody else's problem right now, but wherever that is, we'll create that file path, right? Then what we did here is we determined if it existed. Let me just take all this in. And if it didn't exist, oh, that's a buggy bug, I think. Yeah. See, that was a bug for me. The reason I like doing this is so I can make sure that error is a localized variable to the if statement.
Okay.
You know, I really want that, because for me, I don't confuse one error for another error. Like whatever the error is here, it has nothing to do with the error variable out here. It's unique. But I did this. It worked because I was basically reusing that error variable. But I don't like that. I mean, for me, the whole point is to isolate that particular error variable to that block. In some cases, you just can't, right? So we're reusing it. And it wasn't going to be a bug so much. It's just from a style perspective, if I can localize that error variable, I prefer to do that. Like I localized it here. So this error variable is not any of these. It's localized to
It's
the
its
if
own error for that.
within the scope of the if. So now we're returning anyway, and we do those sorts of things. But I just think it's cleaner to sort of do that. Like it's always my first choice to do this if I can. So I didn't see it until just now, right? Okay. So we can make that directory if it doesn't exist. Okay, so config file, create, nil. Now, write string. We need to generate a unique ID. So the Go, actually this was a change that they made in a latest version of Go. There were always two ways of generating a random number. You could use the rand package, and you can see here a pseudo random number in the half open interval. And you could never use this ideally because it would always return based on the same seed. This was good for testing. You need to test a random number. but you needed to have the same random number over and over again. So the rand package would give that to you. You could set a seed and it would give you that same random number over and over again. It was a rand dot, used to be a seed or something like that. Oh, did that come up? Yeah. Something like that, right? And then you would be responsible for sort of seeding if you were going to use the rand package. That way it wasn't the same number over and over again. Now, I think in some version of Go, they changed it so because it was messing people up so much that it would give you a truly random number now, unless you touch the seed. Let's read this for a second. Right. It should not be used for security sensitive work. Random numbers are generated by source, usually wrapped in a rand. Top level functions are safe. This package output might be easily predictable regardless of how it's seeded. For security work, you want to use crypto rand. Though I swear that they did something here to make sure that if you didn't set a seed, that it would give you a different number or something every time. I'd have to look all that up. But, so what we're going to do then is we should be able to use, oh, there it is, MathRand 2. Oh, maybe they fixed that in MathRand 2. Were we in 2 here? Yeah. MathRand. This must be the, oh yeah, version 2. So I think here in version 2, they did something to, this is the one that was 32. Yeah, I just wish I could find this in the comments. So I know I'm not going freaking crazy here, but. Yeah, okay. Oh, that was just a conversion. N64 conversion. Yeah. I don't know. I swore they did something for the seed. In fact, I don't even see a seed in here anymore. It's like the seed is sort of gone. So it's like they got rid of the seed function in V2. Damn. All right, I don't want to waste any more time, but I think they made those changes here to V2.
So for our purposes, would we want to use the crypto rand?
I think we can use this. So if I go back to this real quick, just to see something, right? And I do int n lowercase n, which was part of that. You see, the first version of this has a seed function, right? And assuming now that I'm looking at version 1.
Seed. Yeah, I see there.
See how they have a seed there?
Yeah.
Where version 2 doesn't have the seed anymore. So, like, if seed was really used so that you could have deterministic, it's kind of weird to say, but deterministic random numbers.
Okay.
So I could put a seed of 1 and you'd always get the same sort of rotation of random numbers, right?
Got it. Okay.
But if we go back to, what was it, V2, now you can see that it's the first time I'm playing with it. I say int n because I don't want more than like 5, right? But there's no more seed anymore. And there's only one way to really test this, is to just make sure. I just wish there was, I know I'm wasting time here, but it's bothering me because go version, go rand v2 changes. Yeah, I'm looking for something specific. Fixing. Yeah. We remove go1 generator, we change source, we remove top level seed function. The global functions like int can only be used in auto seeded form now. Removing the top level, so this is hard code, the use of scalability per thread generators, blah, 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 blah. We implemented Lemur's optimization during the discussion, contribute point out per shuffle. We renamed, we added, we adopted. Yeah. I'm moving fast here, but I'm trying to understand if, because there's no generic methods in Go to enforce. Programs still strongly encourage you to use CryptoRAN to generate cryptographic secrets, but accidentally using MathRAN v2 is not catastrophic, as using MathRAN would be, even in MathRAN global functions. So, long story short is, I think that if I use MathRAND, I'm still going to get a fairly good generated, but let's just, instead of wasting any more time here, let's say we just do this instead. CryptoRAND. And this API is just more difficult to use, I think. Because you see it takes a reader, but I think there is a, what do you use there? So there's a reader, see, and then you got to use big int, and you know what, dude, I'm done. Let's just go back to using this.
This is temporary anyway.
I know, so why am I wasting all this time here?
We're going to do the decentralized auth.
Yeah. Well, I'm just worried that when we start using it, we're not getting the same numbers. So we'll figure that out fairly quickly.
Okay.
So I want to use, so the bottom line for everybody watching this is that if you really need a proper random number, it's recommended that you're using CryptoRAND. So if you were going to build any casino game stuff, or because it uses, I think, the operating system level. This is a good blog post to sort of read. But version 2 has made changes, so if people are using it, they'll get a random number as opposed to. Now, my guess is there's still the ability to make this random number generator deterministic for tests and stuff. But I don't have time to just keep reading it. But that's something I'm going to read after the show, just to read that a little bit more. Okay, so this is going to give us some random, and it should give us, I think, a 5-digit number. Let's do that anyway. Let's test it on the Go Playground. You know me in the Go Playground. Oops. So on the Go Playground, let's see if I can do that.
Hello and 0.
Oh, so it only gave me a 0. So we really want a number. This returns an int from 0 to n. Oh, only from 0 to 5. So I'm not even doing that right.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Right? I kind of want to force a 5-digit number. So basically it's almost like 5 nines, right? But there's no guarantee even that will give me a
8271.
But maybe that's okay for now, right? Like, let's just let it generate a number no bigger than.
But it's giving 4, so it's non-inclusive.
But that's fine. We just need a unique ID for where we're going. As you said, all that's going to change, right?
Yeah.
So if I run this again, now it's 8-4.
5-digit.
And this is the one thing that the other RAND. Look, let's use the other RAND for a second. Oops. So we got 28819. I run it again. So even that changed some stuff, right? Rand seed 1. Then again, sometimes the playground has to do things. No, even that's changing. So I don't know enough. What I thought I knew, I don't know. But either way, this is fine. It's just an integer of some number, right?
For the moment, it'll work.
For the moment, for where we're at, it will work. Now we just need this in a string, which is fine. So we'll just do a func dot sprintf %d, and now we have an ID that's a string. Okay. For where we are right now, you're right. We've wasted too much time on. I just wanted to reiterate what I thought I knew about random, and that thing didn't generate the same number, and
No.
it should have. But again, I don't know what changes. This is where I'm going to get like Filippo involved. I get Filippo on the show. He works on all the cryptography stuff, and he can help us there. Anyway, it's all good. We just need an ID, and this will serve our purpose for the short term. But I am going to read that blog post again when we're done, just so I feel confident again on how that works. Okay, so that wrote the ID. Oh, but we also want to write a name. And I'm going to ask Copilot for this one. How do you get the machine name? What if there's a way to get a machine name? Just because we need an initial name, right? So
os.hostname.
there's a host name there. So what we could do maybe is say os host name. Now in this case, I really don't care if there's an error. Like, really don't care. Because then I can just do this. If name equals that, then we'll just say name unknown, right?
I got it. Okay. Yeah. If it's empty, just write unknown.
Now, I can't just write the ID either. We need to write stuff within the scope of, honestly, kind of in the scope of this sort of structure that we have here.
Okay.
Right? So I think what we want to do in this case now is maybe I make this a type. Just a local type here, right?
Okay.
Call it a document. And then here I can say CFG document. And right now I want to define the user. And the user's got an ID and it's got a name. And that's all I care about here.
Okay.
In fact, I can even do that for the ID. We do that for the name. And now to write the string, we already have an F, right? So what we'll do then is a JSON dot encoder F encode. Encoder should take a.
And F is okay. F is file name. Or okay.
Yeah, but it's not that. Oh, JSON.new encoder, which takes the F, which is the file, and then we can sort of encode it. Okay. So what's nice about that is we can do that. We'll get back an error, right? Again, I can locally scope that error because that's the only thing that comes back, right? So pretty good now. So we can just define this type locally because we only need it. No, we might need this type again though later on for other things. So why don't we do this? We'll keep it unexported, okay, with this, because this is what we're going to use to read and write to the file. This is what the API is all about. And I don't want tags in here because we're not using this to read and write. And somebody might say, now you have a duplicate. Well, not really, because this is the API data, and this is a struct with the JSON tags that will allow us to sort of serialize member storage versus sort of app APIs.
So what's the difference when you have the actual name of the type as like config, it's exported, but its fields are unexported
That
versus
means-
document that's unexported with exported fields.
So we're doing this because when we return a pointer to the config, we don't want people accessing these fields. So I'm
Okay.
not going to say private, but kind of make this data private to just our package.
Got it. Okay.
Okay, so that's the idea. The idea now, we're only going to be using it within the scope of the same package, but we should still be following the right rules. So the idea is that nobody should be accessing this directly. We want to control data access.
So it keeps it to the package.
Yeah, only code within the scope of the same package could access those fields. Again, everything's in the scope of the same package right now.
Yeah.
So it's not doing exactly, but let's
that's
write
what
it. Let's write it as if maybe we move it into its own package one day.
Got it. Okay.
When it comes to marshaling and unmarshaling data, these have to be exported, or the marshaler and the unmarshaler doesn't see it. It thinks at that point that, again, the marshalers run in a different package. You've given it this data.
Got
If it's
it.
unexported, it can't access it.
So you need to have.
So
it
we need
exported
these
so it
to
can
be
access.
exported. And then the tags do what the tags do.
Got
So
it. Okay.
we need it to be exported. I hate adding JSON tags to data that we're returning out. I hate it because I feel like it's a leak of concerns. Like, in all honesty, to me, I just feel like it's a leak, right? Like, for me, if I really wanted it super clean, that to me is, and it's not letting me use oh, it's redeclared because, okay, it's not letting me have the lowercase and uppercase, right? But, let's just say I did this. I've had that somewhere. But,
Down there.
oh, because we called it. Okay, but we'll get to that in a second. So for me, I would much rather do this. Have the data types that we're using to serialize back and forth to disk, and then the data types that we're using to manage the data at the app layer,
Got it. Okay.
right? And this might need to change, and this won't have to change. Right now, it's the same. But it doesn't mean it's going to stay that way. So for me, it's dirty when you're using your storage types. You're using the same type for both storage and application work, right? You see that in the app layer and the business layer. We have different types of storage layer. You see me doing this all the time. This to me is much cleaner,
Got it. Okay.
right? And we can marshal that data. If they're identical, which they kind of are, then it's an easy sort of conversion. But then, this is more of a doc user here. So I think it's really important that people separate the data structures. And the smell would be a tag. This having a tag, and that's what we're returning, is a major smell to me. Because if you put a tag on it, it's because there's some serialization going on. There's some marshaling and unmarshaling going on.
Yeah.
Right? And at the app layer, at that point, there shouldn't be a knowledge about any of that encoding. So I think just if we want to be super clean, this is really the way to go. Right now, there is some duplication, but it doesn't mean we're going to have duplication for the lifetime of the program. And this is what happens when you don't have separate layers doing things. Because if you had separate layers, and we had a package just dealing with serialization, you'd have different data types in there anyway. So there's a balance there. But let's go down this path then, right? So we can serialize a document, right? Which in this case, we already know what the doc user is. Now we go back here, we went through this sort of dance afterwards because I just thought it was easier. Where if the file didn't exist, we sort of already created it and then we read it off of disk. I thought it was nice to just read it off a disk again Also gives you that sort of warm and fuzzy that it exists, right? So I don't mind this. Now you might argue, well, Bill, you have it now. So, you know, if we're in this code path, that to me is a bug too. Why did we put the close here? Oh, because I needed it closed before we opened it. But if I change this a little bit, right? In this case, what we can do then is return. Let's say I do the defer the close there.
Yeah.
Right? Instead of calling this a CFG, I call this a doc. Okay. Now what I can do is say CFG equals a config. Now it's not going to let me just do a conversion from a, oh, it's not a config anyway. It's really a, okay, so you see how I made this a document,
Yeah.
right? And this is a config. I really want to return something like this back to the, I need to return these two things back, right?
Yeah.
I always want to give back sort of the data. So I don't really want to call this a document. I can't call it a config because we're using sort of config here. But if I was going to follow this sort of pattern, right? Let's just say I called it users for now.
Okay.
I'd get rid of this. So again, this is for serialization. This
Yeah.
is for use. Some people would be yelling at me right now going, this is duplication, we could just use the same thing. And I'm going to say, no, let's separate this because we might want to do things serialization wise that we don't want to necessarily send back. All right. I don't like the word of calling it a document here. I don't mind calling it a document, but when you're struggling to name something, that's usually also a smell that maybe things aren't 100% right. But again, that's okay. So that would mean that we should be able to do this, right? Oh, no, but it's two different structures, so it's not going to let us do that. So what we now need to do is essentially be able to convert from a, let's say from this to this, right? That's what we're going to need. So we're going to need some function that says like two.
So we need a to function.
Yeah, we need a to function, two users, which essentially saying giving a document. You can see here constructed a user. You can see here it went, and now for me that's sort of inefficient. Like this is, we know exactly what we need here. So I can do a make. Again, I don't need it that way. I know how many contacts there are going to be. So I could do that already. Then I can use I here and say sub I equals. And I'm not like allocating extra memory and calling a function and stuff. So here's Copilot that gave you code. It would have worked. But it wasn't as efficient as like what we could have had here. Now, even this, I wouldn't do it this way. The way I would write this code is like this. Because I don't like partial construction. So I would create contacts here. And I would create a local variable for that. So I would do all the contact, and then I can do a single return here and construct everything perfectly in one shot. I think that when you do partial construction, where you construct something and then you're using C dot like we were using, that's just going to lead to bugs and mistakes. This is much cleaner. So we use local variables to get all the data we need, and then we do one sort of final construction to what we want. This is cleaner. See, Copilot didn't
Yeah.
do that. Copilot made, for me, a lot of mistakes with this code. Would the code have worked? Yeah. Is it as, I think, clean and as efficient as otherwise could be? No, right? This is much better.
Mm-hmm.
So
Okay.
now that we have our two users, now we can just do a return two users doc nil, right? Now, this is complaining, because this returns a config. So really what we needed at this point was to set these two things, wasn't it? So maybe we didn't need this. What we really needed was, I got confused. We didn't need the to function. We kind of need this code. Hold on, let's go back. We have everything we need for a config at this point. We know there are no contacts.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. What we need then is a config, really, right? That's the whole point of this code. It's to construct a config. Kind of to do this. Where in the config, our user is that. Yeah, I got confused because this is the new function. Then we can return the address of this config. Sweet. Like, we could do this because at this point we're done, right? We created the file.
Yep.
Again, could we wrap this in a function because this new function is getting pretty large? Maybe, just to make it a little more readable. But let's just at least write all the code out. And now we're done. And then in here, the idea would be to open the file. So we can keep our defer there. Now we can use our JSON .new decoder f dot decode. Now we need a document because we're going to read that. So var document address of doc. This could fail, right?
And it's address because we're using pointer semantics.
It's pointer semantics here because when it decodes, it has to write into that object.
Yeah.
The whole point is changing it.
It can't work on a copy.
No.
Yeah.
No. It would have to return the copy, but it needs what the data structure is. If you notice, it takes an any. So anytime you're decoding, you're going to share it because it has to be able to modify it.
Yeah, it
directly.
has to modify.
Directly. Yeah. Yeah. There's no way around that. If you were to not pass it, it wouldn't. Well, that's just nice, but this is the linter screaming at you.
Yeah.
Okay, the compiler itself wouldn't know because it's an any parameter. But this is where your vetting and your linting comes in to say, dude, you're calling a decode function and you're not sharing it, and it ain't going to work.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we open it, we decode that document. Now we have it, right? Oh, now that other code that I had would have been nice, but we'll write it again. So now we can do the contacts, make a slice, user dot contacts. Let's see if it gives it to me again the way I want it. So we'll run over the contacts. We put in each contact. In this case, however, yeah, we want a user. So what is this complaining about? Should convert type-t to returns a doc user. Yeah. And a user has an ID and a name. So I really don't know what it's complaining about. Let's look at it again. Should convert C type to user instead of struct literal. That's not a struct. Length of documents, contacts that we just pulled out. So I create a new slice of user. I range over, I get an index. I say u equals that, and that is going to equal a new user. And we have our user here. And oh, what it's saying is that I see what it's saying. It's saying that since these match identically right now,
Mm-hmm.
that you can just do a conversion.
Oh, okay.
And it'll just be more efficient.
Yeah.
This sometimes sucks. Like I would have maybe liked it kept the other way, but your tooling is like yelling at you, so that's fine. So we do that. And now that we have this, we can essentially do this, right? And then we have contacts equals contacts. Okay, so that quick fix was nice because I had no idea what it was screaming about. So now this one is an open, decode, and we convert the data, which I think is the right thing to do. Now, there's a lot of code in here, right?
Yeah.
So I'll just do it here for a second, but you know, there may be a function maybe that we can write that does the, you know,
Create file or
create config or something, right? And we know that it would be all the code that is sort of in here.
you missed the one line. The if statement.
I don't want that.
Oh,
I
okay.
want that still in the other one because we may or may not need to do this, right?
Okay.
So here's the idea. A lot of times I'll copy the code and then I'll see what's missing. So file path was missing and file name was missing. So file name was here,
Yeah.
but we needed both file name and file path. So this gets interesting, right? Because I need both here. I need the file name and the file path. So if I do file path and file name, I take these as two separate things. Then I can sort of do that. Do this, right? Start
Okay.
seeing what's sort of missing. Now, this also is going to return we can have this return the config pointer. So now, but maybe it shouldn't return a config pointer at that point. Maybe what this should return is a user.
Why just a user?
Because we're just trying to read disk, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so at this point, that's really outside the scope of what this is doing,
Okay.
right? The whole point of this is to read. Now, at this point, though, all we have is a document, right?
Mm-hmm.
So let's have it return a document.
Okay.
Let's keep it raw, right? So that just returned a document, create config. So if that's the case, then the idea here would be create config, file path, file name. This could return a doc and or an error, right? So it took care of all of that. Just keep it like that for a second. So this we already got, didn't we?
Mm-hmm.
Now, we are missing this piece though, aren't we? The encoding to the file. Did we have the file? We did have the file.
Yeah, because we're creating it there.
So oh no, we have it here. We still write it to disk, right?
Uh-huh.
So that's good. So I don't need that there. But the rest of this does work so far in terms of getting what you need back and creating a config. I don't think so this shouldn't be necessarily create config. Maybe. So yeah, the question is, do we want to do this last piece? sort of in here. Maybe it's okay. Maybe it's okay. Because then essentially this becomes a CFG and you just do that, right? And then technically we can just do a return because it does both. So yeah, I think it is. I'm not going to leave the function here, right? It should go below. But this create is cool because it does everything. And now this is just this. And now you can have the function read config, right? Lowercase again. What do we need in order to read a config? We need all of this, right?
Yeah.
All right, so let's take a look at what we need here. So we need a file name. I don't need a file path, right? I need, and that does the rest of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of cool because now the new essentially, and file name, but really this is wrong. This is the file name. And this read actually needs the file. So you can see here we have some fraud, right? So I feel like we should be doing this here too. But you see stat needs the combination, right? So we're going to fix this.
We have a comment.
All right. Would file path base be easy to read? Then you wouldn't have to pass in both values. The problem with create is I need the full value. I need the path and the file name. I need both. With read, I need both, right? Okay. So knowing that, oh no, but the make directory is the problem. Okay. Which we didn't put an error on, by the way. Oh, because it might fail. That's right. So I don't know what's happening anymore. The problem is the make all. I need the file path for that.
Yeah.
So we use the file path and then we do this. So he's saying if you do file path base, which I don't know if there's a package called file path. Let's see, file path dot base. It could give us that information. Let's play with it. I think it's a good thing to check out. So what he's saying is, let's say your path is users, bill, documents, jack.txt, right? If we got back users, bill, documents, then that would be a home run.
I expect a new line.
I forgot to close the quote.
Oh.
Run. So see, that just gave us back jack.txt. I hate all these file path APIs and stuff. They never give me what I want. So that would have been fine. Oh, maybe it's the directory. Let's see if directory gives it to me. Ah,
Yeah.
okay. All right, Jeff is good. So let's go with Jeff's solution here. We can just pass in file path, file name, okay? So we just pass in file name. Now that's beautiful for the read because that. But now, based on what Jeff told us, if we use dir on the file name, this is why it's always best to program in pair, right? Now that gave us the file path, and we have what we need to do that, and now we don't need to do this. So that will like minimize all of our sort of pain here, right?
Yeah.
We don't have that problem here, but we will end up having that problem here. So they'll give us the file path. We're hard coding the name of the config file. That's fine, right? Now, literal strings will always bite you in the butt. They're just going to bite you in the butt. So if we're going to have something like this, right, where we're going to hard code the name of it, then we should probably do something like this.
Negative const.
Yeah. Do something like that. That way, there's no issues anywhere else. We sort of need it. Even though we're only using it in this one place now, right? We have that. Now, there's an argument that since it's only being used here, we could also put the constant there. I don't know what the right answer to this one is. You'll see me do this a lot where I just don't want magic strings. I want to give it some sort of name.
Yeah.
But for some reason right now,
I like it better at the top.
It feels better for some reason at the top in this case here. So we can do that. Okay, now here's something else that's sort of interesting here. You know, from a readability perspective too, what if I moved these types sort of where they're needed, which is sort of right in here. So actually I'm going to move these support functions and types down here. So I like separating. I don't want to put in a separate file, but what we now have is new config, it does the stat. If it doesn't exist, it creates. If not, it reads. We've got our config file name there. This is super clean now, right? Super clean. And then we've got user contacts. We haven't implemented that. And then down here, we have the local support for all of that here, which we're going to, hopefully it will work. Now, someone's like, don't you need to join paths? Well, there is a file path join that might work. We can try it. Might be cleaner. Let's go back to our playground. And let's do a func.println. File path. Let's say that the config file name is Jack. And what gets interesting here is then you don't have to maybe worry about the backslash, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's cool. Let's add a / run. Nice. So remember that other code that I talked about? This stuff here.
Yeah.
Well, based on what,
where we were
yeah,
doing. Yeah.
well, based on
Mhm.
what our friend there just said, you know, that can go away if we just do this, which honestly I never thought about before. Right now that goes away, right? Because it's handling that sort of logic. This is a change I could make in some other projects too. This is kind of nice.
The
File
work is
paths,
already
right.
done.
Yeah,
for
it's been
us.
done, right? It joins them and it does all that. What's also probably good as it reads here, it's OS specific. So if you're on Windows, you're not putting the wrong slash.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. So this was a really good find for what we're doing. I need to go if I go through code and see any of the old stuff, I'm going to switch it, even though it's working. You shouldn't
Yeah.
break code that works, but this is actually clear. So that was a great suggestion. Yeah, there's so much in the standard library you cannot possibly know or remember all of it. So that's another good reason for doing this. Look, I kind of knew about that, but I haven't used it. So, but it's nice, right? So this is beautiful here. So I don't. Now the question is, do we need to keep this information again, in case we are going to need to keep this information, right? So why don't we add the file name as a string. And this is going to have to add the file name as well. Now, one thing I hate, now that I see this, is we've got two places now that we have to remember.
To do that.
That's going to be a problem, dude. That's going to be a big problem. We're going to forget to do it. So I think what we're going to have to do is figure out how to do that here. And it's going to be a problem. I promise you it's going to be a problem. So let's start with the read for a second. When it comes to the read, let's go back here for a second. We have both the user and the contact information that we're trying to return, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because we decoded the document. So what if I went back to this for a second? Okay. What if I went back to this? Let me save this up here. It's all bad code right now, but what if I went back to this for a second? Told it, just return the raw document, all right? And the same thing with create. What if
The copy of the document.
a copy of it? Yeah, it's just data.
Okay.
So now the problem on the create side, no, it's still not a problem. Okay, let's say we did this. Take that other stuff out. Just create it and give it back to me, or read it and give it back to me, right? So now what we have is this. Now that could be an error. All right. Fine. And we do the same thing then. Now, I hate else clauses, so hate else clauses, man. Ideally, if that, so the whole point here is that whether we have a file or not, right?
Yep.
Okay. And I hate else clauses like you cannot even possibly imagine. But we're gonna have a situation here. Okay, case nil. We're going to read the config. default, let's say, we're going to create the config. Then we can maybe put an error here. And then we do this.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now we can't make the mistake of forgetting that there's two places to do this. That would have been total disaster.
Yeah.
Not just for me, but whoever else had to maintain this code. So let's just read this again though to make sure. So I'm defining a document variable. We're gonna do an OS stat. If there is no error, we'll read it.
Yep.
If there was an error, which is the default case, which I hate, right? I'd much rather,
The other way around.
well, I'd almost rather this be if error does not equal nil, that means that was a error file, right? I'd rather the default be the read.
Yeah.
See what I'm saying? So we do that, and then this way we check if there's an error, create default. That's sort of clean and easy to read. If any of that errors out,
Then we get the.
and we
Okay.
don't, I don't know if it was the create or the read, but let's just say that's okay. There's no reason to duplicate that. And then if we get that far, we may or may not have contacts, but whatever. And now we've got the file name in there as well. So this to me is 10,000 times cleaner. Anytime I see an else clause, I'm gonna pause and do this. The naked switch is a brilliant thing with Go, and I try to leverage it. So that the naked switch lets us do Boolean logic there. Now again, we could switch on error, but I really wanted not nil. I don't think I can, I don't know if I can do, no, see, I can't do that, which wouldn't make sense really. So I'm gonna leave this. Nobody's complaining about it, so that's good. So this is cleaner, right? Because these are lower level functions. They should only be working with the storage types. That was a mistake using the config types. We were trying to do too much. They should only be working with storage types. And our document is our storage type, right?
Uh-huh.
And so this feels now much cleaner, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Reading and writing to storage, which we're going to need to maybe add some more stuff to that API. Now, basically, we choose one over the other, and we now have a config with some information in it. So, like oh my God, we're an hour and a half in, and this is all we've done. Oh man. So I want to see if this even sort of writes the file out to where I want it, right? So the whole point is we're trying to unhack all of this stuff here, right? So if I go to the cap for a second, yeah, we did the ID file path chat. Yeah, because we're running it in the root, you know,
Yeah.
which we're running it from the root. Even if we do a go run, it worked. So let's do a couple things here. I'm just going to get rid of all this for a second. And let's add another constant for the config file. Oh, yeah, well, we could put it in Zarf. That's fine. We already had ID cap, right? So let's just put it in Zarf. So we have that, right? So now the idea is that we're going to have app.new config. We're giving it the file path. Now, ideally, let's go back and look at that API for a second. Yeah, because we're hard coding the file name, aren't we? So then we can just give it this. That's fine. Okay. So that gave us back a config, right?
Mm-hmm.
And or an error. I hate that everything's in main. We should have put this in a run so we can return. So let's just do that real quick. Just even clean this up. A run would have been better, and this could be a run that returns an error. You know, at some point we got to start. So this would be a return func.errorf, right? This could be a W, and this will be the same thing. That'll be a W. Okay.
Need the return.
Oh yeah. What was that hack one down there? We're still not using it, right? I hate this comment section. I don't know what you're saying. I know, we're trying to get there as fast as possible. So your ID now would be user ID, right? Let's go back and look at what we did here. That was a string. We got to change this now to not use a UUID, right?
Yeah.
So everywhere that we had UUID now needs to be a string. We're going to have to change the cap to deal with that, but we're going to have to do that. And then our client send to, yeah, this can just be a 2 now, right? I'll have to parse that. Okay, we're gonna have to fix the cap to make this work, but let's get back to this. If error doesn't equal nil. Okay. Config handshake. Okay. Okay. So new config, client defer, new app, find app.find name.
It's already a string, right?
Well, that's your ID anyway. I don't remember what find name does, but
Find the name.
let's take a look at what did find name do? Oh, it looked in some list that we already had, I guess. I don't know. We'll deal with that later.
Okay.
Why is it complaining about this? Strings should not, oh yeah, you're right. They should not end in this. Okay. Fine. What was this hack one that we kept? I don't remember. Okay. The hack one wasn't using app at all, was it? I'm gonna just get rid of it.
I thought we had already.
I did
like-
too. That's okay. And this is just run. Okay, so I just want to see the file get created, right?
Yeah.
I just want to see a file get created under Zarf here. So we do the new config that gives us our ID, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's our ID. Let's just say I do it here. And remember, we needed the name, but ideally now the name should come from this, right?
From user, yeah. Okay.
So I don't know what that find name was that we wrote, but I think that was a little hack that we put in there.
Okay, probably.
Oh, find name looked in the list to see if it could match an ID or something there.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, this could use a 4 range, actually. Anyway, that's fine. Yeah, so we won't need that anymore. We'll get it from the config, right? I mean, that's the whole point.
Yeah.
Defer close, new app, write text is for the handshake. I hate this write text name. Why did we call this write text?
Right text.
When is it used?
Right text.
Oh, it's more for logging, really, you know.
Yeah, I guess that's more.
Where you log is sort of up to you, but that's just.
Because that was to write it to the actual UI, right?
Yeah, but
So
it's more of a log, I think, than anything else. Yeah, and then app write text. So let's clean that up. That was more for the logging than anything else. A log function, log type. Okay, so then this handshake has a logger, right? And then, okay, let's see what happens. Oh no, nothing's gonna work though until we do one other thing. Like this, nothing's gonna work until we get rid of in the cap. Let's take a look at that real quick. Chat models. Okay, all these UUIDs.
Oh, they have to go to string now.
They have to go to a string. And we could create our own ID type too. And maybe we do that later, but.
Once we do the decentralized auth, or
I
do
know.
they stay as a string?
Yeah, they'll stay as a string. But now we've got all these issues here, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, we should never have used a UID. I was going to use string that time, remember?
Yep.
It's okay. So it'll be fast.
There was another one. Up. At the top. There was another UUID left.
Well, the cap ID could have stayed as.
Oh, it is there.
Yeah, no, the cap ID can stay as string. That's not a problem. So that's what I just broke here, right? The cap ID should stay as a UID.
Got it.
That's
Okay.
fine. So that doesn't change. But our users here should be a string. All right, so let's see. Now, and this should be a string. And that should be a string. And that should be a string. That should be a string. So by doing that, now everything else should still work. The cap ID can stay as the UUID. That's fine. So now everything's a string, which is fine. So let's run. Let me start at least my cap here. Don't worry about yours. I'm not going to push this code just yet.
Okay.
So I'm going to do the chat run. And then I'm going to, why does that happen? And then I'm going to do this. And hopefully we get a file under zarf. Okay, which means I have a file under zarf.
Yep. Config.json.
Okay. So there it is. User ID is 4616. My name, which I'm going to now change to Bill Kennedy, and there are no contacts, right? Okay. So a couple things then. that was beautiful, right?
Mm-hmm.
The one thing I might change though is on the create. Well, it's okay. The JSON package has a cool JSON dot Marshall indent, which I really like, because I could do this. What it does is it
adds it so it's in that.
yeah,
like,
it's kind of,
indented.
we can read it, you know. So one thing we could do is I give it this document, right? No prefix. And I say indent with 1, 2, 3, 4 spaces, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then that returns the actual JSON doc and or an error. All right.
Marshall.
Now I have the data. So in this case now I could probably just do an f.write string. Maybe I don't need to write string. I can do an just write. I have the bytes, which is JSON doc. That returns 2 things. You see now, if I do this again, let me hit escape. If I do this again, and I run hack 0. See?
No, it's indented.
It's just nicer there. And that's how we'll do it. And then I can just call this Bill Kennedy. Okay, so that worked for us, right? That gave me a file. The host name was sort of useless. Do we agree?
Yes.
Yeah, so I don't know what to do with that other than we're going to say unknown.
Unknown for the moment.
Okay, so, or what's that other word that I can't spell? Anonymous.
Anonymous. Okay.
Anonymous. Very better word. Okay. So, oh, that was a bunch of people.
Yeah, just people chatting.
But we already can do it here. I don't know why, but oh, some chatting. Okay. So, the reason I use the run pattern, Alexander, is because we can just have these 2 lines once, print the error in OS exit, and the run function acts like any other normal Go function, just returning errors. So it's a pattern that just allows you to do normal error handling and then have a single place. Because if not, when you have to do things in multiple places, you're going to miss it. Just like I started panicking that we were creating a config in 2 different places. You're going to make mistakes. Okay, so we have to add to the git ignore
that config.
The config .json. Nobody else should get that. Good. And we now have, so before I push this code for a second, we now have a config, right?
Mm-hmm.
And in my config, I know about myself and nobody else, right? This is now my new ID. Okay, so in the client, in the app, I'd start up. Okay, we give it, what is my ID? What is the URL? But it might also be nice to give it a config. Or not the config. I need the contacts, right?
Yeah.
I need the contacts. Now, the config contacts, let's go back and look at that API. It returns a slice of this user, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Oh no, not new client, new app, sorry. So here we want to do CFG. Actually, it's going to need the config. It's going to need the entire config because it's going to need to talk to it.
Okay.
So let's do this. Takes a client, right? Takes a config.
The comma there.
Yeah, I got it. You're starting to be able to recode, son. That's cool. Now that's all in the same package right now. So we'll get that. And we have the config, right? It's all in the same package.
Mm-hmm.
But now this has the config. So you see this here?
Yep.
Okay, so watch. Now, I don't have anything, but CFG dot contacts. Let's use the exported one.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that gives me back all the users, right?
Yep.
For range users,
Mm-hmm.
add item, we're
Yep.
done.
And that's it. No more hard coding.
Now, I could use I here, and ideally we need that I to be ID. Fastest way to do it is just an sprint f with a %d I. So I have a string.
Got it. Okay.
And that's that number. Now, also, ideally, I don't want to start at 0. So that is a shortcut rune, which means, oh, can I convert? Oh, it's a rune. I wonder if I can just convert this to a rune. Ah, even better. Okay. So, though I don't know what that rune's going to be, because a rune is it's not going to be the number 1. That's going to be ugly. This is not what we need. Okay, let's not worry about this right now. But that is not going to be this. That's going to be, it's like I'm going to have to add like 58 to it or something like that. I don't remember what.
To make it.
If I do this, look, ASCII characters, right?
Yeah.
Code. Where's the number 1 located? It's a 49, right?
Mm-hmm.
If I do that, then it will start at number 1 because we're really dealing with that rune. That should work. Okay, so no, I don't have any users, so I'm going to do the following. I'm not going to run anything else. Just I'm going to push this, but you're going to run the client so I can get your ID and we can sync up our files.
Got it.
Hopefully nobody else tries this just yet. Git add all. So git, what am I doing? Git commit minus client changes. Git push. Okay, pull latest, and you can start your cap. We're not going to send any messages.
Okay.
And you can start your, oh, I have a bug here now. Hold on.
Yeah.
And ideally, also, we just need chat client. We don't need hack 1, hack 2. All right, so I obviously had a bug that go please did not tell me about, did we? Line 31. That's why I thought we were good. What is it complaining about? Too many arguments to call to app new client. Oh, maybe I Did I not do this right? Oh, I didn't. Oh, I forgot to do an add, bro. Sorry, man.
I thought you did do that.
I thought I did too, but tell me if you got it now. There's lots of ways of converting strings. You can use font, you can use the string convert package. I don't have necessarily an opinion on when to use one over the other, to be honest with you. Okay, what is your ID? Close your client down.
Let's see.
What is your ID?
Hold on. Let me pull it up here. Here. Config ID 20723.
Okay, so ideally, let's just do this. What is your ID?
20723.
And that will be Kevin Smith. Do we put your name on the thing? What's your last name again?
ENRIQ. Easy.
Man, too many. Okay, so go into your file and do the same thing and add me.
Do I not have?
No, dude, it has to be under contacts.
Oh,
Inside
okay.
of
I see.
contacts.
That's why.
Yeah. All right, waiting for Kevin to make some changes on his side. The other thing I can now do as well is, remember we said,
Need your ID?
my ID is 58365.
58365, and I have to get rid of this and this.
And the comment. Okay, so one other thing we can change. Remember we said we would change the placeholder for ID?
Yep.
Let's just do this instead. .s print. %s. Now our config has the user ID. So we should see that. So let me push these changes now.
Yep.
Some ID change. All right, now I don't have to restart the cap, but, and I changed this now to just be
Client.
hack run. Why didn't I call it run client? Let me make that change. Hold on. I'm gonna call it. Let's change this to be called run cap,
Okay.
and I'll call this run client. Okay. Got run cap and run client. Let me make that last change.
Run cap, run client. Okay.
Just changing. Make file. All right. So let me push that up. Okay. So let me just try this. So I'm going to rerun the run cap. And then I've got the make run client. And okay, so that's cool, right? I see you there.
I don't see
You don't see
name.
me. So go back to your,
It's probably my file.
maybe you didn't save it.
No, I saved it. Maybe is my syntax off?
Let me look at mine again. Let me see. Should say contacts, colon, brackets. Oh, no user,
Oh,
just
that's what it
ID.
is. Okay. I just did a straight copy paste.
Yeah. Save that.
Okay. So that should be it.
Yeah. All right. So
Yeah, there you are.
now you're saying, okay. Now I have no idea if we broke anything here, but I have you selected, right? Hi, Kevin. Hello, anonymous Bill.
Oh, because that's my name. I didn't change it in the file.
Okay, so
So I can make my name, let's say Kevin, right?
now what's interesting is this, right? That's fine. You're Kevin, but I know who you are there.
Yeah, it's there.
I have
it's
you in
just
the
not,
list.
It's not appearing there.
Right. So the message came in with anonymous, but ideally the client should have used.
Yeah, I should have used what's in the list.
First of all, that just worked.
It did.
So that's, we didn't break much. But now anybody can participate, right? But let's just fix that one sort of bug then. So what do we know? We know what's highlighted, right? So what just happened? A message came in. We did the handshake. I got your name, whatever. A message came in, and oh, this is why we didn't want to call this log, right? Because it's not really a log.
It's writing the message.
It's writing the message to the window, right? So, I don't know. Problem is I got confused, right? I got confused. So when that means that, it means we didn't name things right. So I'm going to call that UI screen right. And that's going to help me remember what that's doing, right? It's writing to the screen. But if I come back here again, that's the name. Now, we could fix this. We could fix this if this had the config. So watch. If this had the config,
it would be able to access that.
now it can access it, right?
Yeah. New client config.
And then, since it can access the config now, what it can do, because in the out message, we have the from ID. We have the ID. What we need to know is what is the name in the config related to this ID. So what we can do is we can do a lookup contact, right?
Okay.
And so we could say, given a ID,
Yep.
let's see what it gave us. I don't know if this is right. Definitely a read lock. We don't have a map. We have a list. So we'd have to go in and match it and then return unknown. So let's say if we get an empty string, then we use what came in over the wire, right? And we could create a map if we wanted to with ID, and it would be index, like it could be an index, right? So what we could do is change this to be a map string user, let's say. Now what that means, however, is here we're going to make a map string user. Now, ideally what we're going to have is a user.id equals an entire user. I don't need the I there. And that should be fine, right? So we've got this. And then on this, on the okay, we got to fix that. But And I don't even know if we're using this right now. So now this gets simpler because we could just do this. C.contacts sub ID, return that. Well, have to be more like you exists, right? If doesn't exist, return that, else return u.name, something like that, right? So the other thing though is we could return the entire user, couldn't we?
Yeah.
So we could do something like that. We could use an error because if it didn't exist, then we could return a
User.
you know, errors not found, nil. Okay. I don't know if we're using this. Oh, we are because we're filling the list with it, right?
Yeah.
But now that we've made this a map, we have two choices. I still don't want to just return the map because that's pointer semantics. Like maybe this is overkill because the list is never going to be that big. A linear traversal would be fast as opposed to indexing it. But what we can now do here is just say users, make a slice of user. Again, I hate that. Now again, this is key value pair really, right?
Yep.
So it's key user. And I don't have an ID. So this is a case where we need to set the length to 0 and the capacity because we're going to have to use an append. There's just no way around it.
So if you use an append, you need to have that.
Well, if I know the length
Yeah.
and I have to use an append, then you set the length to 0 and you set the capacity. An append will just fill in the capacity with the length there. Now, what's interesting here is this already gave us a user, right? So I don't know why we can't just do that. And then I don't need a key. Yeah. So we're just going to range. We only need this once at the beginning. So it's not a big deal to range over the map and then just give it the slice, and then the lookup is going to be faster because we got a key for that.
Yeah.
You know. Now, what that now means is that from the config, right? I'm just looking at the receiver name here, C. So now from the C config, we have a lookup contact. We've got an ID. All right. And now what we can do is if there was actually, like this is a case where if there was no error, I almost want to change this to equal, oh, this comes back with two things though, doesn't it? I don't like using if statements for this because it's not obvious. But this is kind of the situation we're in now, where if there isn't an error, then I want to use the name that we looked up.
Got it. Okay.
For that, right?
If there
it's a local copy, so it doesn't matter. So look up the contact. If we found it,
yeah,
then replace the name. So
if errors even, oh, okay.
like this is confusing. You don't see this a lot. So this is something that's it's going to confuse a lot of people. But at the same time, this is exactly kind of what the situation is. The other option is not to return an error, check if it's 0, but let's just keep it. But like that bothers me. Like normally we want to use the if for the error condition, but the condition here is to replace the name if we find it. So let me push this code up. Let me escape. I don't think we have to reset the chat server. We're trying to fix the from name. Git push. So pull that down. You can make run client again. restart your cap.
Mm-hmm. That's what it was. I got the commands wrong. Okay. Go Kennedy.
Sorry, message. And now
There
it
it is.
says because it came in off of that instead,
Got it. Okay.
right? And then it would be the same for you. Hey, Kevin.
Yep.
And now it says Bill Kennedy. So it's pretty good,
Very
dude.
cool.
All right. I know it's 1 o'clock. Let me see. Let me see. Let me look at my calendar again real quick. I got till 2. Okay. I know it's 1 o'clock, but we're going to go for another half an hour because if we can do this one last thing, everybody on the call could sort of talk to us.
Got it. Okay.
Now, ideally, let's say I didn't know who you were,
All right.
right? You're going to send a message to me.
Okay.
If I don't see you in the user list, I need to add you
Yeah, you need to add it as a.
and then select that, and then we can start talking.
Yeah.
So don't do anything yet on your side, but ideally what I really need now is to basically, and plus what I did here in the config with, we created this slice with a length. Yeah, you know, that should have created a, on the config, oh no, here, sorry. This to me is a mistake here. We should have done a contacts, and I should have done an empty slice. Then we would have gotten the brackets
That
there
way it was
and not
already
null.
built.
Kind of. But I'm going to get rid of you here, right? This is where we would be.
Mm-hmm.
So the next step is for you to have me in your contact list,
Yeah.
to send me a message, for me to look you up. If I don't see you in the list, I got to add you.
Yeah. Add it as a contact.
So all that's going to happen basically here, right?
Yes.
Okay, so now this gets interesting because if I look you up and if error's not equal nil, then I know that you were not in my list. So now I've got to add you to the list, right?
Yep.
I've got to do a c.cfg dot now. We don't have it.
Add contact.
Oh, add contact. That's good. I have the user. Okay, add a contact. We've got to finish that code. We didn't write it.
Yep.
Okay. And then once I add you, the problem now is that I need to add it to the UI.
You need to update the UI. So it's almost more like an update context. Or update.
I need another, see, we're gonna need an interface soon. We're gonna need a update contact function that we code ahead of time.
Mm-hmm.
So now what we're gonna need is a in the handshake update contact.
Yep.
And now in here, we're going to do the update contact call. Hold on. Oh, just update. I'll call it update contact. I'll call this write UI. So this is write to the UI, right? This is app layer stuff.
Yep.
That has to be pre-coded. And then this is going to be update contact with the user. And again, and obviously this is add contact. This is
Update contact.
So we're going to need that new function now that knows how to update a contact at the UI level, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So now we have another function doing it at a function level called update contact. But update contact
Goes in.
has this signature. And this will be an app user. And what it's going to have to, why don't you know what an app user is? Oh, it's in the config. Yeah, app user. All right, I'll deal with you later. Oh, maybe in here I didn't call it an app user. That's fine. Oh.
Why are you not?
What did it think it was?
In there we have
Yeah, it is an app. Oh, because I'm already in this package. That is an app user. So I don't know what it's.
is it lower?
Not a type compiler. Okay, I'll deal with that in a second. The idea now is that we have this function at the client level that says we update a contact based on this user. There it is, an app user. And here now at the app layer, we're going to need an app dot also update contact. And I don't know if it can take a user though. We might have to give it the two things, like a user.id and the user.name. So we got to write that code there. Now again, I don't know what that means at all. Oh, is it not a user? It's a contact? Defined type. What do you mean it's not? Oh, that's what's killing me. I can't call this app anymore because it's also the namespace. You know how many times I do this?
Oh.
I do this all the time. So it's a new app. So I'm just going to call it A for now because I don't have a better name. Okay. That's what was happening. The namespace clashing.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
I see it now. I see it now.
Yeah. So I think we just have to write these two things. We got to write these two functions. The update contact at the app layer, given a name and a. So let's go into our app code here for a second. Right.
Right text.
Yeah. So we got to add this. I don't know if there's an error actually with that. So let's say there is no error because it's just updating the UI at the end of the day. Just updating the UI. There's no error with that. Okay, so this is going to be the ID, which is a string. It's going to be the name, which is a string. And essentially, it's the same.
It should be the same thing. Text view area.
Where did we go right in the beginning? Here.
Contacts.
It's going to be one of these, right? However, I need that ID. I mean, we need this sort of thing. So we know what the name is. We know what the ID is. However, I need to know a.list. I wonder if a.list tells us how many items are in there. Get item count. Nice, right? Because we need the item count to hack this. We call this the shortcut.
Shortcut run.
Now,
Oh,
the
okay.
idea there is that that started at 0, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we might have to do 48 here. We'll see what happens. That's the shortcut. In fact, it might be better to call this shortcut too.
I like that name better.
Now, it didn't use a capital C, so sometimes I like to just stick with the API design if I'm okay with the decision that was made. So if you hover over it, you see they said shortcut.
Yeah,
so
shortcut.
we can just keep it. So ideally, though that number might be off, because before we started at 0, now we're going to be told 2. Remember, it was 0 plus 49, 1 plus 49. So let's just try that.
Like here it was 1.
Yeah, it should be 1. I just want to make sure that's 2. So there's your update contact. Okay, so we have that. So now in the client we have this. The only thing we don't have now is this. And this writes it to disk. So we're super close.
Mm-hmm.
We have a couple ways of doing this. And the simplest way to do this let's create a function called update
Update config.
where it takes a user. Okay.
Yep.
Now,
But
Well-
an update config could have an error, but not updating the UI.
right. This is now serialization, right?
Yeah, this is lower.
So what I would do is this. Doc error read config. Now, here's the problem. The file name. We generated the file name like this, right?
Yep.
Based on the file path.
Yep.
Okay, so now the problem is that this can't just be a function. It's going to have to be a method because we don't know the file path. Because we have to do this again.
Okay.
And this is going to be based on C dot. Now, we already have the full file name, don't we?
Yeah.
Okay, good. So let's go back to this for a second. Read config / it wants the file name. We have it. All right. If the file is empty, or we don't get the file, that would be a config read error. That's fine. That should never happen, right?
Mm-hmm.
Not at this point in our life. Now I've got the complete doc. Okay. Now the idea is to say doc.contacts equals append contacts and convert that to a user.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have our write config, create config. Now, right? Now I think we can do a write config and just write the whole thing. Let's see. So what's a write config? It says given this and a document.
Okay.
Okay. Given this in a document. Now, in this case, we don't want to do an open. We want to do a create. We're going to replace the document.
Yeah.
Okay, so we do a create. I believe create creates or truncates the file. Okay. We take this. we already have the document. We do that, we write it, and we're done, bro.
That's it. Yep.
And we already updated the list ourselves, so we don't have
Yep.
to read it again. But that's the right config. So when we're adding a right, so we should be able to just call right config.
Because right config's redoing it anyway.
So, oh, we already did add contact. So basically, this is add contact, isn't it?
Yeah, essentially.
Yeah. I mean, this is essentially add contact, isn't it? Given this user, read it, append it to the local map, and write it back down. That's add contact.
Mm-hmm.
There it is.
And then update.
So let's, again, we're getting confused, right?
Yeah.
So UI write, UI update. Keep getting confused. So that means that we don't have this right yet. UI update contact. So I'm going to call this UI update contact UI screen write. UI update contract, and then I can call this UI for consistency.
Mm-hmm.
So now we have the ability to update the contact in the UI, right, with this function. And yeah. Okay. This could work. We could try it. Handshake app config. Let's see what happens. So
Okay.
no, there's one more thing we're not doing. When we update the contact, we should set that as the current item.
So it would select it for them
So in the UI,
in the UI. Yeah.
does this return a, this returns a new list. So given a list, returned a list. So this would be the last item in the list then, index. So then this would just be this. I'm gonna guess. All right. Because your name's gonna come in, I want that to be selected right now.
Okay.
Right now, ideally, maybe I'm chatting with somebody and I don't want that.
Yeah, you don't want to just flip around.
Yeah, I don't want to flip around. However, we haven't done chat history yet, right? So one of the, I just want to put this here, right, is you got to keep separate chat histories. So right now, when you do this, it's going to pop up in there,
Yeah, it's just gonna all be
Yeah.
in one window.
but we'll deal with that next week. All right, let's see what happens here, dude. Let's git commit minus am, so fixing the user list. Again, I don't have to restart the cap, but pull that down, and I'm gonna run the client.
Yep.
You need to send me a message because you know who I am. Okay, so a couple things. That didn't work very well. It
No.
could have been because I should have used 49. But did this get written out? No. So all bad things sort of happened there, didn't it?
Yeah, I just wrote them with 0 value.
Okay. So none of that. Well, at least this happened. We just didn't get the right information.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I'm gonna escape. Can't work perfectly every time. I need you to stop trying to help me. Let's go back and see what happened here. So I don't think that was the bug, but I'm going to do this anyway. I think the bug had to do with, we know this user was wrong. Oh, okay. Oh, dude, of course, I used the wrong user. Such an idiot. I'm going to fix this. This should have been from ID. Oh, man, nobody caught that.
Not from the add contact.
Instead of a user here, we're going to ask for ID and the name. Okay. I'm going to do that. And then here we're going to construct a user name. All right.
Oh, okay.
So that was the problem. That was silly, silly, silly. If we look it up and it's not there, I have to use this information here.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, then we can update it. Now, this if is a real bummer to me. So you know me, right, already.
Switch.
Okay, so now we'll look it up. If it's not there, we add it, we
Yep.
update. If it is there, we do that. Okay, I think that's gonna fix it. Not that you need this change, but get commitment. Okay, I'm gonna run the client again. And you're gonna send me a message.
But my name
Okay,
is
so
still
one
not
is
popping
good.
up.
Oh, that's fine. One is good. You're first user. So that was there. Let's see what happened this time. That's good.
So now we're just not writing.
We're not writing it properly. So let's go back and look at the client code again. Oh, again, I did
Yeah,
the
the
same
user.
dumbass thing, didn't
Okay.
I? Okay, that was, again, we'll try it one more time. Kind of disconnect it by just using the string, right? So the idea here is it calls update contact the way it was kind of designed.
Yep.
And now this does the same thing. So I'm going to come back in here. I'm going to remove you again. This is Copilot. Stop trying to be helpful. And I'm going to kill you, get commit. Hopefully this isn't the last contact bug. Okay, soon I think we can get everybody on. So I'm going to run client. You're going to send me a message.
There it is.
Now it's there. I'm going to send you a message back. Good. Okay. Anybody that's on this stream, pull the latest from our repo, which is this repo here. Pull latest, run the cap, run the client. My ID is this, 85365, 85635. Now, it's all going to show up in one place here, but if somebody connected and did that, we should see them. That would be pretty cool. So I think the next thing now is we have to keep a buffer of the chat history.
Yeah.
And show that when you're sort of selecting. And then you would have to have a indicator in there that there's a message from somebody, because you're not going to just switch, right? But I think this should allow somebody to, Now they're going to have to add me as a contact, right?
Yep.
So you're going to have to, when you start the client, you're going to have to come in and add me as a contact, just like that. Yeah, that's not going to be terribly obvious. But if you start the client, you'll get an ID, change your name, and you can add me. I'm 58365, and we should be able to talk. So, yeah. Anyway, that would be the idea. It would be nice to have maybe a sample. Maybe I do. I didn't ask you to do anything. My God, dude. Sample config file. Yeah. What was my ID again?
It was 58365.
Yeah, that's kind of cool.
Eventually we'll have to do it so that way you don't have to actually add the contact that way.
Well, you have to know the person. There's just no way around it. Like, you're going to have to manually do, yeah, we can change the AI
So
so
put
you
it
can
on
do an
the
ad.
so you can do it on the
Yeah,
on the UI.
in the UI, but we're not there yet. But if I put that in there, people will sort of see it. So
That's already generated.
yeah, that's going to be pre-generated.
Oh, we got one.
You got it? Oh, somebody sent you a message.
Yeah.
Joseph, send me a message, man. I'm gonna do that kind. So we can all see it on the screen, and it came into your list, so that's kind of cool.
Very cool.
And then I see that came to me, and I said, I don't have you there. So, oh, there's Joseph right there. I'm gonna select him. I'm gonna go, hey, dude, cool. Now, again, we got to fix this chat window because it's all in it, but we'll do that. We'll do that next week.
So we can boom.
Because now we got to kind of do this in a buffer and stuff. But
Very cool.
dude, that's working, man.
Very cool.
And now we've got that list. And if I go back here and I look at my config, now I know his number, right?
Oh, okay.
You have it now too.
Yep.
So that's all working. So we're half an hour in, but let's add our final notes here. But see, this is really decentralized at this point, right? So he panicked the first time. Yeah, I wonder why that happened. Because maybe we broke something with the config. We'll have to test it. So let's do this. We'll add some notes here. So actually, let's do this. I'm going to rename my file to, I'm going to escape. No, it didn't. I thought maybe that caused a panic, but it didn't. Created it again. It'd be nice to know what the panic was. But let's go back and run the client. Yeah, so we did this, we did this, we did this, right?
Yep.
All right, so I think the next thing is we've got to keep separate chat history and show a marker for new.
It seems like it's repeating in the logs at least.
It's going to, because it's got to send it to it's going to come back in, but it says not found, so that's fine, right?
Oh, okay.
Anytime people are sending messages to each other, your cap is going to get it,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
If you have that ID in your list, you'll send it to the client. If you don't have it in the list, then you won't. So that's the bad thing about the cap is going to receive every message in the system right now.
Got it. Okay.
The fact that it's saying not found is good. What we care about is it's not happening here, right?
Got it. All right.
So send another message. So again, once we have the buffer, we'll know all that stuff. But
Yeah.
but you're going to see a lot of that in the cat because we don't have any smart routing,
Okay.
right? Everything's got to go on the bus and everything's got to go out.
Yeah.
It just goes out. So your cap is constantly getting a message and asking, is this ID connected to me?
Yeah, is it for me?
There it is. Here it is, right?
Yeah.
So that's okay, right? It's not like we're getting the same message over and over again. The acts are working, all that's working. We've got a pretty cool UI working.
That is pretty cool.
All right, we did that in 2.5 hours. So, all right, I'm going to shut down my system. We're really close to it all being anonymous too. So next, when we come back on Tuesday, we're going to deal with these two things. Keep a separate buffer. So then when you select that chat, when you select that person, you go back to the old chat. And what we could also do maybe, is see how much time we have that day. Save the chat history, right? So if we have time, we'll save the chat history too. That way when you bring this thing back up, you can load up the history. We could do it all in local files, just like we saw here. So.
And does the terminal UI support like scrolling already?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So under Zarf, we could create a history folder. And then for that ID, we can keep history files. I think we could do all of this on Tuesday, which would then mean that on Thursday,
we can
we swap out these IDs for a private key. So somebody can't spoof. Right now, I know your ID. I can say, hey, I'm this person.
Yeah.
And I can spoof somebody. Like, we can't have that. But I think on Thursday, we could start to sort of fix that.
Yeah.
Then what we can have is the encryption we talked about, right? And then what we can do after that is send a file and then sort of group chat stuff. So for those that are watching, these are our ideas. I think Tuesday we finished the final work on the client with the separate chat history, all that. We're really close. Then we're going to work on decentralized authentication. So the ID that you have in that file can only be your ID. Nobody else can have it. I can't trick the server in me thinking that it's you. We're going to solve that problem.
Yep.
Then we've got peer-to-peer encryption. Again, everything's going to be over NATs, but actually, we got to send the file first because
sending the file, then
I don't know which one we got to do first. In order to do peer-to-peer encryption, we've got to be able to share public keys, but that could be done with a single message.
Yeah.
Right. But I think what we talked about was we talked about sort of transient. I can't spell transient today. Transient. Let's go back to this for a second. I can't remember the NATS word for it.
The consumer or some
stream. Yeah. So a transient stream is what we need, right? Sometimes when I can't spell something because my brain is shutting down, I just throw it in here. All right. Transient stream. Because once you can set up a transient stream, then we can do this, then we can do this sort of stuff.
Got it.
The idea of the transient stream is that we construct a stream specific for, but we need encryption to do that too, because we want to.
Yeah, that's what we talked about. We needed to do the encryption before.
Yeah, you need encryption to do a transient stream to then send a file that nobody else gets.
Yeah.
And this is going to be about, sharing a public key. So there's things to work out related to NATs. We're never going to get a pure peer-to-peer connection going there. We're not going to play that networking game. We're going to try to do everything on the NAT structure. So, all right, let me save all of this. The only changes that I made that you don't have are the comments. And the sample config that's there. So All right, let's do our git commit -m, some final notes. Git push. Pretty wild. So I'd say that we had a good day.
Yeah.
We've got a client that's working. I think we need one more session to get it to a point where we don't have to worry about UI stuff so much anymore. And then on Thursday, we'll be able to start doing the decentralized auth kind of Web3 stuff.
Yeah, that'll be cool. I'm
Yeah,
excited
I don't
for
know
that.
how long it'll take to do that. Maybe 2 sessions. I mean, we did 2.5, but I really wanted to finish that last piece. So, dude, it's badass that it just started working.
It is. That
I
is
know,
really
isn't
cool.
it?
It's cool to see it now.
But you can see how much stuff we've built already that, right?
Yeah.
There's some of the complexity that we're now building on top of it, but it's gonna get pretty good. So, all right, so we're gonna be finished for today. We'll see everybody again on Thursday, but this is now in a place where you can play with it
Yeah. People
yourself.
can message
You
each
can
other.
start messaging people.
Yeah.
Yeah, and only if you know the other person.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's the cool part. All right, we'll see everybody on Thursday.